And you made a very strong point. If wherever God leads, He feeds. If He guides, He provides. And if it is God, you don't have to worry. But I thought of something this morning that, even one of the texts I used yesterday was a text that speak about suffering. That once God call you, folks must prepare that there are some suffering that go along. We have taught people coming to God and all your problem will be solved, everything, and then we program people to believe that now I'm in ministry, everything going to be nice. But I was saying to folks recently, our anointing does not make us immune to trials, storms, and pressure. I wanted to
I wanted to. Well,
elaborate.
it's funny. I had a conversation with a young lady yesterday, and as much as we have been told that there are two seasons, a lot of times in the Christian faith, and you hear about two seasons: sowing and reaping, sowing and reaping. And I had, as I read a book I picked up in the States some time ago, and I was reading. It was giving you the life of a Palestinian. It was giving you what they wore and how they cook, and they didn't have Tupperware. They didn't have Rubbermaid, so it was clay. And they were telling you so much about the Palestinian upbringing. But one thing that they mentioned as they spoke about the agriculture and the seasons, they said that there was a season of sowing, a season of reaping, and a season of vintage. Now, that word didn't mean much to me. It's not a word that I am familiar with. So I took out my dictionary and looked it up. And vintage is a term that anybody who's listening that knows about wine, they will quickly catch it. Because when a man goes to buy wine, he will ask the gentleman, what vintage is this wine? And the man would reply and said it was a 1849, it was a 1901, it was a 1605, and that's the year. But what the word vintage means, it means to be pressed. So he's asking the gentleman, what year was this, were these grapes pressed? And a good wine man will say, oh wow, 1920? Oh, that was a good year because the grapes were well watered and they weren't sour. Or he would say, oh no, that's a bad vintage because that year they had drought and the grapes were bitter. And to every Palestinian person, there was a season where they would sow, a season where they would reap, but there was also a season of vintage where, for example, they would press the olives. So you ask a farmer, what season? He said, boy, I'm going down there because even after he has harvested the olives, he now has to begin to press. And that's where Jesus used the example of a millstone, where they would put the stuff, they would put the grapes, or they would put, even with Gideon using the wine press, there were seasons of pressing. There were seasons, and if you know about the olive and the 5 different type of crushing, the first oil that would go to the priest and the temple, and they would press it and crush it and crush it, and the oil would come out. And the grapes, they would press them. There were seasons of vintage. And as well, even the example of Jesus, as he was in the Garden of Gethsemane. Gethsemane means to press. It was surrounded by olive trees. And I think we have not learned, especially if you're young and just entering in, you don't understand that there's a season called vintage, a season of pressing, a season where you mentioned the word anointing, the oil. That anoint means to rub. In order for that anointing to come out, it has to be pressed and crushed. And that is something, again, as I talk about the buffet, where many people say, no, thank you. I'll take the blessing, a double portion. I'll take some triple blessing over there, some double anointing there. And when they get to the part on the buffet where they see suffering and maturing and dying, they say, no, 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 no. I don't want that in my plate. But the reality is that we cannot, that we may know him in the power of his resurrection, but also in the fellowship of his suffering. It's like we can't have one without the other. We can't have power without the suffering.